Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, founder of Antarctic Press, a comic book company coming up on its 40th year. Also, creator of such comics as Ninja High School, Warrior Nun, and the Marvel Mangaverse, among a host of many others. So, anyway, I've been listening to several podcasts with some interest concerning a certain publisher or creator, so to speak. And he's the talk of the comic book industry is he's having some sort of big sale on his comic books, at $5 a piece. Now, there's been some debate going on back and forth as to whether or not this was a wise move and what it means. Now, some people have said, he has every right to price whatever he wants to for his inventory. And many people have speculated that he has quite a bit of inventory if he wants to try to move it at $5 a piece. Now, it's not unusual, when companies have large stocks of inventory, they try to clear it out as quickly as possible. And if it means reduction in the price, then that's what they'll do. However, when it's being touted as a collectible, and your entry point is very high, then it stands to reason that many people who bought in early may feel betrayed by the sudden reduction in price, basically devaluing the collectability of the original material. Now, I'm not going to judge whether or not it was a wise move. He can, this particular creator can do whatever he wants with his inventory. It's not my business to dictate to him, how he should operate his business. However, I will say this points out a major flaw in his business model. My understanding is that he preprints the book or the comic book and speculates as to what his sales will be. So he's trying to predict the future. That's very dangerous, because oftentimes predicting the future can be very, very nebulous and very, very unpredictable. I mean, let's face it, if we could predict the future, then I'd be picking lotto numbers. The one thing about running a comic book business, especially if you're publishing, especially if you're a creator trying to make a living, is cash flow. Now, a lot of people may not understand that a comic book company is a business. And like any business, you rely on cash flow. There's a reason why Marvel and DC keep pumping out monthly comics. Cash flow. They know that as long as they keep putting out comics on a monthly basis and put out a lot of them, then cash will keep coming in. And they need that in order to stay in business. That's the way with almost any business. If you don't have cash flow coming in, then your company is going to go out of business eventually. When it comes to the point, the thing is, it's a very simple thing. It's like weight loss. You burn more calories than you take in, you're going to lose weight. Simple as that. If you make more money than you're losing, then you make a profit, and that's what keeps you in business. The reason that a lot of companies go out of business, comic book companies go out of business, is they can't maintain cash flow. They can't put out enough product, or the product doesn't sell enough in order to cover expenses. And that's just a simple matter. If you can find a way to increase your cash flow, then you'll stay in business. This is how AP has stayed in business for the last 39 years. We understood very early that cash flow was the key to our success. If we didn't put out comics every month, enough comics to cover the bills, then we were going to go out of business. And there have been, I'll be honest with you, there have been several instances throughout our 39 years, close to 40 years, where we've been very much on the verge of going out of business, but something we put out a book just in time or did something to change things that kept us in business. There are many instances I could tell you, and I may go into them someday and let you know, tell you how we overcame, particular hardships in our, finances during our many years, decades, years, in business, and to tell you how to. Now, if I were to give some advice to this particular creator, is to find a way to increase your cash flow. Now, personally, if I had made that kind of money, I would have just put out one book and then invested the rest in some sort of passive income, cash stream. I would have taken that money, I would have bought a laundromat or a car wash or something else like that, or invested in stocks, and just live off the interest. I mean, can you imagine? If you took, let's say you made, let's say you made $3 million, you spent $1 million to fulfill your campaign, took $2 million, let's say you take $1 million, put it in some sort of 10% stock, you'd be getting what? Every year, 10% return on $1 million. What's $100,000 a year? I think most people could live off that. And that's just the interest. I mean, that's you could just sit back, relax, and retire. Never have to worry about comics ever again. I mean, that to me would be the smart move. But, if you want to continue to go into this business, then you have to do several things. First of all, you got to know your audience. Now, that's true, and if you think you have a set number of audience for your product, then try to make sure you please that audience so they never abandon you. Put out something that they really want to see and read. Short of that, you need to come out with product every single month, in order to maintain that cash flow. So you have to be a real publisher. You have to go out. You got to find product that people will buy, and put it out there. Now, the business model he has is that he has a website that sells directly to consumer. Now, the problem is you don't know how many consumers are going to buy it. You can't predict that. Obviously, it hasn't been consistent, following some of the things that have been going on. The beauty of the direct market, especially for companies like Anarchy Press, is that we get orders from retailers. And retailers, they predict how many books they're going to sell. And then they send in the orders to us, and we print according to what our orders are. So we don't get stuck with massive amounts of inventory. Now, over the last 40 years, we have built up quite a huge stack of inventory, but we've tried to, move it as quickly as we can, but it's been a difficult, it's been difficult, so in order for us to maintain our business, we have to keep putting out books. Now, the only way to put out books is to get creators to make them. Now, you could do one of several things. Marvel and DC, they create their own product. They hire people, they create their own product. They have editors, people who manage their titles, and make sure they come out on time. Make sure they contact the talent, and make sure the talent gets paid and compensated, and they make sure that books come out, for the company. Now, as a small publisher, you may not have that luxury of having a bunch of IPs that you can rely on to maintain your cash flow. So you basically have to go out and find new talent that have already created something. Now, this is the model that Anarchy Press has used successfully for the last nearly 40 years. We rely on a constant flow of new talent to bring us books and creations that we feel needs to be out, or can we feel that we'll take a chance on the direct market. Sometimes they hit off, and sometimes they don't. Many times we've put out comics where the initial sales were terrible, but in the long term, they became big hits. A good example is Go Digger. Ninja High School was actually very successful in its initial launch. People really liked it because there wasn't much competition for American comedy, manga. Go Digger, had a hard time out the gate, but because of the tenacity of this creator, Fred Perry, you kept at it. He slowly built an audience, and is now one of the best-selling books. Other examples are like Strangers in Paradise. Did not go out the gate strong, but eventually found an audience, and is now, considered a classic. Many comics have done that. The thing about it is that they didn't give up, and they knew that they had to keep, at it at a regular pace. Now, the thing about it also is that the comics that AP puts out are usually less than $5, and or were less than $5, are very affordable. Usually, so people could have a low entry point. If the books happened to take off and they became valuable, then that low investment became, a big investment, and became, the hopefully would translate into something that they could monetize later, being a collectible. The thing is when you have a high entry point for collectability, then you have expectation that it'll maintain that collectability and that it'll remain high, as far as the value is concerned. So, some people may think that's a mistake, and I have no, idea whether it's a mistake or not. But I will say that devaluing the, if this was a reprint or this was a second chance thing, then that'd be a totally different thing. But apparently, you are getting the original, item that this creator asked a very high price for, and that may, alienate his original backers. I understand that he's trying to get more people to take a chance on this book, but I don't believe that's going to happen. Personally, if there was people who really wanted to continue to support this particular brand of comic, they would have continued to buy the book, even at that high asking price. If word got around that this was a great book, that it was worth every penny, that it was and that it would be, something that is going to last for years and decades and become a huge pop culture icon, then he wouldn't have to worry about reducing the price of his creation down almost to giveaway levels. He might as well just give it away and just write it off as a tax, write off all his taxes, or he might as well just burn them, and write it off of his taxes, as lost inventory. There's other ways you could, that's what Atari did with all those E.T. games. They went in and buried them, just wrote them off. That's what movie studios do with movies that they can't release. They take a write-off. They never release them. There are ways around things. There always will be. You just gotta know how to handle it. It would have been better off for him to just, get rid of them, and write it off, and this way create even more of a scarcity for that particular book. But that's the thing that is the downfall of many comic book publishers, especially comic book companies. I'm hearing there's some companies out there that are having financial difficulties. Why is that? If the comic book industry was healthy, there wouldn't be any financial difficulties. But but it isn't. The comic book industry is not healthy. It's basically because the content is garbage. Most of the content is garbage. And I hate to say it, because I think among the independent comic book creators, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of creators out there who are producing really good material. It's just that they're not getting the reach that they would like. Yeah, and the thing about crowdfunding is that it's a direct-to-consumer thing, so all the people who are going to back it are only the ones who are ever going to read it. Even if they love it, even if they love a certain creation, a comic book, and they tell people they should read it, they can't, because they lost that window of opportunity, to get the book, because the crowdfunder is already over. I mean, they could go back and reprint it again, but by that time they'll have maybe lost the memory of it, or by the time it comes out, no one will care anymore. The good thing about the direct market, and that's why I think it's still important, is that it exposes your creation to random people in the crowd, and it increases collectability, because there's only a certain number of books out there. The entry point is very low, at least it should be, and you can keep putting out books on a regular basis in order to maintain cash flow. The thing about Kickstarters is that you can only do as many Kickstarters as you can get books out there. The thing about direct market is that as long as you make it into the catalog of the distributor, your book will, and you can maintain putting out the book on time, you can keep putting out that book month after month after month after month, as long as you can maintain the production schedule. And that helps with your cash flow. Also, it increases the exposure of your particular product. Hopefully, people will gravitate toward it, and start picking it up and reading it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So if you're a comic book publisher, or somebody who is thinking about starting a comic book company, my advice is really don't do it. You'd be better off really taking that money and investing it somewhere. But if you're determined to be a comic book publisher, think about how you're going to maintain your cash flow, because really that's really what it comes down to. What your expenses will be and what your cash flow will be. If you find out that your expenses are going to exceed your cash flow, then you may want to rethink your business model. If I were to give some advice to this particular creator, I would stop focusing on trying to beat Marvel and DC at their own game, because you're never going to win that battle. They're too well entrenched, too powerful, their fortifications are too strong. Your best advice is to dig under it by creating something different and something new, finding new creators, creating a brand that people can identify with, and get yourself into other venues such as comic book stores or newsstands or wherever you feel like you'll get the most exposure. The thing about it is that when you do that, then you maximize your potential, and you never know when one of those books becomes a big hit, and you can become even more. Now, there's no reason why you can't do both. Also, it decreases your inventory, so your expenses will be less. And that's really what it comes down to, is the balancing of what's coming in and what's going out. Even a company like Image, as for all its success in its beginning, failed to capitalize on that success because they didn't have a good business plan. There was a lot of egos at stake. They spent too much money. And eventually, in order for them to survive, they had to rely on other creators to maintain cash flow, because the only way they're going to, keep that money coming in is by putting out product. And the best way to put out product is not to rely on creators who can't, reliably put out product, but to rely on creators who can. That's the key ingredient, to the success at any comic book publisher. At least in my opinion. Now, you don't take my word for it, but there is a reason why we're still around for nearly 40 years, and we've seen literally hundreds. I've seen literally hundreds of comic book companies crash and burn, with many with millions of dollars at their disposal, and finding huge success with the comic book community, and then have long been forgotten and on the dustbin of the dash heap of history. Yeah. So I understand that in the comic book community, Antarctic Press doesn't really get that much respect. I know that. I'm not naive and foolish to believe that a lot of the comic book community are big Antarctic Press supporters. Now that's beginning to change. I'm seeing people actually starting to become more and more interested in what Antarctic Press is producing or has produced, because some of our books are actually starting to become collectible, increasing in value because people didn't give a crap about Antarctic Press. So there are very, very low inventories of high-grade copies of particular issues that have become, more or less iconic or collectible. And that's really the key to the collectibility market is, high demand, low inventory. Why do you think Golden Age comic books are so valuable? It's because people didn't give a crap about comics back then. It was disposable entertainment. People just threw them away, used it to wipe their butts with, handed off with their friends until, folded them up in their back pocket, gave it to their kid sister so they could draw all over it, and then during the World War II so-called paper drives, and during the 1950s, purge, those comic books were very, very hard to find in high grade because nobody kept them. Very few people kept them, and coveted them and, made them, kept them in really good condition. Now, modern comics, everybody collects them, so there's just a huge abundance of high grade books out there. The thing about Antarctic Press is that we've been around for nearly 40 years, and we produced literally thousands of comics, hundreds of thousands of comics, and because we had very little respect in the comic book industry, many people didn't collect them, and we gave a lot of, big name artists now their first break in a lot of these comics. Yeah, and a lot of these comics have now become collectible because they're hard to find in high grade. But anyway, that's my advice if you're a would-be comic book publisher. Think about the cash flow. And even if you're a creator, of a particular comic, think about the cash flow. Because really that's how you maintain business. Now, if you already have a good paying job and you're just doing it for fun, hey, more power to you. If this is your dream, then follow it, pursue it. Hopefully it will pay off. But I would definitely think twice about, quitting your main, occupation in order to pursue comics. What I would do is wait until you get to the point where you can actually make a living doing comics before I would even consider leaving your, a good paying occupation. Like I said before, you'd actually make more money working at McDonald's or some minimum wage job than you would actually making comics, if you really want the truth. I mean, let's face it, the only reason many people get into comics is because they have this lifelong dream that their characters or their story ideas is going to pay off big in the long term once people discover what a brilliant mastermind your work is. Well, I hate to break it to you, 99% of the material that are going to come out there is usually going to be language in obscurity, clearly forgotten. Only a small percentage ever make it. But if you have the drive, the tenacity, and the wherewithal to stick to it, and if your work is actually work that people can identify with, and really get engaged with the story, then you may have a chance of becoming successful in this business. I've been in this business for a long time. I would not consider myself wealthy just yet. I've had my brush with financial success, but I always blew it because I kept putting it back into comics. Had I taken my own advice and bought Google stock or Apple stock or, whatever, thing back then when I had the money, I wouldn't be worrying about doing comics if you really want the truth, But as it is, I made my choices. I love what I do. I love comics. I always will love comics, until my dying days. So, it's just one of those things that I cannot seem to get away from because I love the idea of creating something from whole cloth and sharing it with other people. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. But if you're wanting to do that, then you have to really take into account seriously how you're going to pay for it all, because that's really what it comes down to. Comics are a commercial venture, and if you want to succeed in that commercial venture, you have to think about how you're going to maintain a cash flow in order for you to maintain doing what you're doing. So anyway, that's I'm rambling all long enough. And until next time, this is Ben Dunn signing off.